Hello you lovely lot and welcome to a new video. My name is Katie and we're gonna unbox and create with Scrawlrbox number 94, also known as the June edition. If you didn't know what Scrawlrbox was, I'm assuming you do, but if you don't, it is a monthly art subscription box where we get lots of goodies, including a gorgeous featured artist print. This month's artist is Iskra Sale, and that is a beautiful picture. It's actually making me want to have tattoos, it's that nice. Of course, also we get delicious art supplies and a magazine and a candy and a sticker, and what more could you ask for? Upon initial inspection, it seems to be a graphite-y kind of box with a few added extras in there. And of course, I'll go a little bit more deeply into those things whilst I swatch them, but we've got a nice amount of kit here. I'm quite impressed. We'll take a quick look at the magazine before swatching though, and I like Scrawler magazine. It's always worth getting a brew on for that. Just sit down, get to know your supplies, read up about the featured artist. It's all good. There's always nice hints and tips in there, and I really appreciate as well that they feature artists like ourselves who have participated in challenges, and well done to everyone who made it in there. And look, I made it in there too, and that totally made my month. I also like the fact that they feature like previous boxes, so maybe if you're overseas from the UK and it's taken a while to get to you, there's still an opportunity to end up in the magazine, which I like, as well as the weekly Scrawler challenges. But of course, let's get cracking, shall we? So, we have a tin of pencils. To be more precise, it is the Wolf's Graphite Sketch Kit, and we have a selection of 6 graphite pencils, a carbon stick, a sharpener, and an eraser. The pencils inside are HB, B, 2B, 4B, 6B, and 8B. And whilst swatching them out, they are all quite buttery soft. Obviously, some of them are going to just be a little bit softer than others and will spread a little bit further. You can use your finger to smudge the graphite, however, I'm not a huge fan of doing that, so a blending stump will have to suffice. The carbon stick is, well, it's very dark and black, which is what I expect. Also included was a Koh-i-Noor white coal pencil in medium grade, and that worked pretty good over the top of the graphite as well as the carbon stick that I'd placed down. And you'll notice we had a Pilot Supercolour marker pen in gold in a size medium, and let me just tell you, that pen smelt of the 90s. The gold and silver pens you'd have back then smelt just the same. Not as strong, but just the same. Let's not forget about the surface that we've been provided, and that is the Frisk A5 drawing paper. It's 200 GSM. It works really nicely for graphite. It's toothy enough just to sort of catch the lead, but it's not too textured where it's going to take over any mark making you do. Also works good with that marker pen that we've got, as well as the carbon stick. Also included was some Frisk Trace Down carbon paper, also in size A5, and that works really well, and I will give you a very brief instruction on how to do this. However, I do feel because the paper was a little bit thicker than what I'm normally used to, it didn't quite work as effectively, but let's just say, for example, you're just sketching something on some printer paper just out of your domestic printer, and then you want to turn it into something better. It is absolutely perfect to use that way. So it's good stuff. You can keep reusing it as well until there is just no carbon on there anymore. And yes, I'm glad it was included, and I did try and use it. Anyway, it flashed up ages ago, but the Scrawler challenge for this box is Midas Touch. Obviously, that's because the gold's in there. My initial sketch through here, I thought, let's just do a character or a figure submerged in what could be a golden lake, and maybe they're emerging, and maybe they've just sort of splashed around. I'm not sure. We'll just have to wait to see how it develops. However, I thought I would just do a bit of a sketch through first, make it a bit rough around the edges, because that carbon paper will be good to transfer it onto a nice fresh sheet. As you can see, that carbon paper is sandwiched between the layer that I'd drawn on and the layer I want to transfer onto. On the carbon paper there are two coloured sides, well, different tones. You want the darker side to press against the layer you're wanting to transfer to. And as you'll see, once I've put my sketch over the top, I'm just drawing over the lines I want to keep, and that should transfer through. It's pretty much self-explanatory really, it transfers through. I used the HB pencil to press through the designs. That also meant I wasn't drawing over the same area more than once. However, even though it's a HB, I did find that these pencils were quite buttery soft, so I wasn't quite able to put as much pressure on as I wanted, and as you can see, it's a very faint outline. I think you can just about see what had transferred through, and that's okay, it's nice and subtle, so that's kind of what you want. You don't want loads of marks on there, that's the idea of transferring your design through. However, I think if I'd sketched it out initially on a thinner paper, like say computer printer paper's probably the best, I think it would have worked more effectively. But hey, you know what, I've got these sheets to play with and it is always very useful stuff. Now, with all brand new pencils, especially ones that tend to come in a tin, they are not the sharpest. They're okay to swatch, but they always need a good sharpen, and I've started sharpening with a knife now. It just means I've got a longer point, well, for longer, and I think it's a nifty skill to have, so I went and gave them all a good sharpen. I definitely recommend you practice trying that. That poor sharpener in that tin's not going to get used, I'm afraid. Sorry. I think I went off topic and waffled a bit there. Anyway, I wanted the background to be all moody and dark, so that black carbon stick did the job. I must admit though, I really don't like the feel of that in my fingerprints. I can kind of tolerate graphite for longer, but oh, anything pastel-y, it just gets right in the fingerprints. I can't wear gloves because I'll kind of not be able to be as precise, so I guess I just have to suck it up. However, I did use a blending stump to blend everything out rather than my finger because I was just not down for that. Obviously there isn't a blending stump in the box, however you do have a box and you can just rip bits of the cardboard off and use that instead. However, I like to preserve my boxes and give them to my dog, and then he has a little scrawler box project of his own. Once I'd got that initial carbon layer down, it was time to start adding a little bit of depth in there, so it was time to start using the pencils, and I went straight in there with that 8B one. And these pencils are actually quite lovely to use. I do feel like they're a little bit darker than what the grades say they should be, but let's face it, most different art companies sort of have little differences here and there with their supplies. Let's face it, look at ultramarine for example. Loads of different companies that make ultramarine, they're all slightly different, and I guess it's where they source their materials from, and I'm waffling again. However, I did find them very buttery, that's the only thing that I can say, but I liked that they blended really nicely. You don't need to put a lot of pressure on, and I'm getting better at doing that now. I'm not quite as heavy-handed, and I still have my moments to be honest, but yeah, I really like these pencils a lot. I can see them getting some use, especially in life drawing classes. And I really appreciated how nicely and smoothly they blended out with that blending stump. In fact, the graphite that lifted off was perfect to start adding tonal variations onto this character's face, and it was really good to be able to build up those layers too. You see, and that's another good reason to sharpen your pencils by knife if you're confident to do that, because you can save all the little graphite dust and you can just use it like this if you wanted to, and it's pretty nice to get those nice soft edges, as you can see there. So whilst past me is happily drawing away, what did you think of this month's box if you've received it yet? Like I say, I was pretty chuffed with it. I think it's quite nice to have some dedicated graphite supplies rather than just a random pencil here and there. I think the random ones are the worst ones for me because they kind of just get used for sketching stuff, and then I end up settling on a favourite pencil anyway, so they get abandoned, whereas I have a nice dedicated drawing set here, and that makes me happy. Apart from the carbon stick, which is just yuck. I should also mention I didn't need to use the eraser because using that transfer paper meant I just omitted all of those sketchy skeletal lines for my work, so that poor erasers, probably not going to get used for a while, so I can't comment on how that performed, as well as the sharpener. As you can see, it's time to start adding some deeper tones in there, and that's when I go straight back in there with the pencil. I can't for the life of me remember which one I used, but let's just assume it was one of the darker ones. This really helped to just give the areas a little bit more form. Obviously I'd got the tone down there, but I really needed to refine it a little bit more, so by just going straight on there with the pencil and then just gently moving it around with the blending stump, it did a chef's kiss job. I'm not going to lie, I was really happy with how that turned out. So one of the things I want to note about graphite in general, it's shiny. I mean, I'm not talking mirror shiny here, and I'm not talking as shiny as the marker pen that we've got, but it's still shiny, especially when you blend it down. It almost creates a mirror polish shine. Not quite though, I mean, it is graphite at the end of the day. As much as part of me really wanted it to be as dark as the background and those lines to be as dark and as black as that carbon black slab, I also appreciated the fact that it's a quality in itself, and I kind of like the fact that you'd got this dull silver shiny reflective-ish finish, and I think that worked really nicely with the gold pen that we had. I can't explain why fully, but something just worked out quite nicely there. It wasn't so much that the graphite was more subtle than the carbon black, and that added a more delicate touch. I actually quite liked the difference in shininess there, which is something I'd normally reject, but in this instance I thought, no, let's embrace it. Let's just take it in. Now it was time to add the liquidy area, and I wanted a base of that carbon black because that gold needed to stand out. I'd left that bit till last though because I didn't really want to be smudging it everywhere, and I'd already done the background and risked doing all of that then, but luckily that didn't happen. So yeah, doing that bottom section of the page last, or at least close to the end, worked out a lot better. And as you can see, the gold really stands out nicely. I like the fact as well that you've got this warmer tone over this rather cool looking picture here. I thought I'd also add a golden tear running from her eye just for drama, but I actually quite like how that turned out. I incorporated a little bit of gold into her hair, and then everything else is kind of just trickling off her. So let's assume that this gold that she's in is not sticking to her skin, and it's just sort of running off like water off a duck's back. As you can see, that black area I'd done for the liquid there worked really well, and I must admit as well, I was really surprised by how well the gold pen went over it, and it didn't ruin the nib or anything, so I was quite pleased with that. Another thing you would have noticed when I was swatching is the other mediums went absolutely fine over the gold, apart from the white, but I wasn't really sure what to expect from that anyway. So it was a good opportunity to add a little bit of tonal difference there, as well as a bit more definition on the edges of where the gold marker had gone down. And I was quite happy with how that turned out. I do end up using that white pencil though. I use it to just add a little bit of highlight to the character's hair. I thought I'd just bring her hairline at the back of her head down a little bit, as it was just looking a little bit odd for me. And then I went and added that little halo of light around her, as well as a few tendrils of hair sweeping off. So as this video draws to an end, I shall conclude on a few thoughts here. I can understand this not being for everyone. I think pencils do come across as being quite a basic material. However, you really can do some good stuff with them. Initially, I thought this was a bit of an odd combination. However, I kept an open mind with this, and I was determined to make it work. And I think, at least in my opinion, I did. Again, I was sceptical about that gold pen working over these dusty materials, but no, it wasn't a problem at all. I think if something could have been added to this box, maybe a blending stump, but let's face it, you can just rip the box up and use that as well if you haven't got any blending stumps. You can even roll up a piece of the paper. However, I don't know why you would want to do that with that beautiful Frisk paper, but it is still an option. But I did have a lot of fun with this, and I might do a beyond the box as well, playing with it a little further. Speaking of Beyond the Box, I have got one from May. I just haven't got around to voicing it over, but that will be up at some point along with this. I might actually combine the videos, actually. That's not a bad idea, is it? Anyway, as always, let me know what you guys think down below. I just want to say a massive thank you for watching. There should be some more videos on screen I think you'll enjoy, and I will see you lovely lot on the next video. Bye!